Hello Internet! Hey, it's Mike White with 143. So today I'm going to help a customer. I'm going to be removing a black background from a low-res logo. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the image size in Photopea.com. Then we're going to upscale the image with iloveimg.com. We're going to go over downloading Inkscape in case you haven't done that. Then we're going to separate the colors in Photopea. And finally, trace and reassemble the logo in Inkscape. Let's get started. So this is the logo. It was sent to me in an email. And you can see that it is pixelated and it's on a black background. So it's kind of the worst case scenario that you'll ever run into. So I started out by just downloading the image. And then I'm going to switch over to Photopea and I'm going to choose Open from Computer. Alright, so there's my image. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that I'm looking at this, pixel to pixel. That's one of the things that's really nice about Photopea, is you can view it pixel to pixel, and it will show you, we didn't see a change, exactly the actual size that it is. So if I zoom in, I hold Control plus, I need to look and make sure what size I'm actually viewing this at. What size am I seeing the image at? And right down here in the bottom left corner, you can see this is 200%. Okay, and we want to view things at 100%. And what we're trying to do is judge the clarity. So I see JPEG artifacts on this image. I think it was sent to me as a PNG. But when you see these odd little ripples and changes in color where there's no need for it, you can trust that that's been a JPEG at some point. And those are JPEG artifacts that are making this not clean. So one thing I can do to reduce those is just reduce the image size just slightly. I don't want to go much. And this is totally in proportion to what size the image is. So in this case, I've only got 724 pixels to work with. So it's not very much at all. That's about 2.5 inches wide, not even, and about 1 inch high. So when you look at this, you can just, barely reduce it. Let's try going 500. And what I'm concerned about, I'm going to hit OK on that, is I'm concerned about little things like the breaks between this T and this I. Now let's look at that pixel to pixel again. And it is much sharper by reducing it just that tiny bit. We've just got sharper lines all the way around. You really have to be careful with this step. You want to go just the right amount. And the only way you're going to understand that is to kind of feel it out and get the drift of what's going on. Now to work with this, I'm going to need a larger image. So we're going to upscale it. So I'm going to take this result and I'm going to do File, Export as PNG. And I'm going to name it. I'm going to call it JCS logo. It's nice to have a nice name on your image. And I'm just going to put 500 because that's going to let me know that it's actually 500 pixels. And I'm going to choose PNG because PNG is a lossless format. And I have my quality set all the way up to 100. I don't want to lose any more quality than has already been lost. So we're just going to save that. Now I'm going to pop over to iLoveIMG. This is the application that I'm recommending this week. It changes. There's lots of upscalers out there. This one offers you some free trials. You can try it a few times before, actually buying it. I use Gigapixel. I use Gigapixel AI from Topaz Labs. This is what I use to actually, upscale on a regular basis. But I'm trying to show you how to do this with free software. Okay, so I'm going to choose the 4X. And that's taking a second, so I'll pause. All right, and then I'm just going to hit upscale. And that'll take a second, and then it'll download. It says your images have been upscaled. And normally it just starts the download automatically. That's just what just happened just there. And you can see I've got the JCS logo 501, and that's now in my downloads folder. Let me show you that. So it's right here in my downloads folder. Now I'm going to go back to Photopea and again do open. And I'm going to choose that upscaled version. I think I'm going to rename it first though. I'm going to say JCS logo 2000, just to let me know that that's been upscaled. And hit open. And I've got a much cleaner version of the logo. It's still not beautiful, but I'm going to get better tracing out of this, now that I have this set up. So I'm going to start my process by doing some touch-ups. So I'm going to do that trick to view pixel to pixel. Control 1 is what's supposed to do it. Let's try that. Control 1. So this is the actual size of the image that I have. So now let's do some cleanup. So we're going to reduce this to just a few colors. And you can see, we've got this blue outer shell that seems to go exactly the same color. We have this white stroke inside that. The blue is continued on through here. We have this orange, it's a solid orange that outlines the hammer. We have the orange of the text. And then this appears to be a slight gradient from top to bottom. So we're gonna have to address that. Knowing that you're going to reduce it to different colors is very important. Separating the colors is what we're wanting to do. And one of the reasons we have this nice and upscaled is so that we can get in real fine and clean up some of the edges. So I've just switched to my brush tool. I'm going to point out that I have it at 100% hardness. And I'm just going to draw and straighten up some of these colors. So I'll give you an example. I'm holding Alt and I'm clicking to select that color right there. Now, I don't think that's going to trace very well. Some of this is going to be reduced by, your work. So I'm going to try to get rid of that and just kind of clean that edge up right there. Okay, so I want to start a new layer. That way I can draw on top without actually harming the bottom, harming what's underneath. And I'm just going to clean that up. That's probably part of the orange showing through, and we can see a little piece of that orange showing through back here. But I'm going to make the decision that we don't want that it's just a detail that we're going to lose in our cleanup. And that's not something that you ever like to do. It's not, the goal is to get it as nice as possible and as true to the original as possible. But you also just have to realize your limitations. Okay, so all this is really burnished. This is really messed up, burnt pixels. And so I'm just going to hold Shift. I'm going to click back here and hold Shift and kind of follow the curve of this hammer. So I'm going in straight lines. When I hold Shift like that, it's actually making straight edges. So I want to go in lots of little segments as I follow that curve. So I'm just going to clean up all around there. In places like this, you just have to round out by hand. Just go real slow. You can pick on those whites and reduce your brush size and just sharpen corners like this. So click here. You're really looking at those edges more than anything else. So I'm just going to click. Really trying to get a firm edge wherever I see it not being firm. And how much of this you do is just literally going to affect the quality. And you have to realize that your time is valuable. You can't spend all day doing this, obviously. It's very therapeutic though. Now as you move around the image, you just use your middle mouse button. It's one of the features I love to brag about in Photopea. So I'm just cleaning these edges up and trying to get a clean selection. That wobbly part right there won't look nice. Now I realize that's following the hammer, so I'm just going to kind of go with it, but also straighten it up so that it's not looking quite so garbled. And then I want to get all the way in here and make this connection really strong. So I'm just going to click and sharpen that edge right there. Same here. These are the kind of trouble areas that you're looking for. And you can switch back and forth between your colors as you do this. So I'm going to grab the blue and clean that side up. We'll just etch this out real nice in the blue. And if it doesn't make sense, just straighten it up. You know, if you don't like the detail that you're seeing, get rid of it. You also want to focus on the things that matter the most. So, you know, the hammer was something that drew my eye immediately as something that needed some help. And I think we've got that sort of cleaned up there. Edges are very important. So I'm just going to make sure these edges are nice and strong. And I can actually go all the way along this bottom edge. You're always looking for straight lines you can draw. Let's just pump our brush size up a bit and draw that all the way through. So we get a nice clean edge there. Here's a little mess right here. Just firm that up with that line. And you can really get carried away with this. This is something, you know, that you need to be careful of because you might just never finish. All right, let's get this. Hopefully that's enough for you all to see, you know, how this process goes. And obviously you can take more care with your own work than you would, you know, if you're doing it for a client, because you're not, you know, not on the clock when you're doing your own. All right. Here's some fuzzy, furry little edges right here. We'll just make that more defined. And I don't know how much you can see on your screens when you're watching the video, but these edges that I'm attacking just don't look sharp, and I'm just attempting to make them look sharper. Okay. So that's all I'm going to do with that up there. I'm going to grab my eraser tool, and it's right here. And again, I'm going to check the hardness. Okay. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the bracket keys right above the enter key are how you adjust the size. You can click the size here and adjust it like this, but I like to actually use the bracket keys right above the enter key because I can just do it as I'm working rather than, you know, be inside. Now I chose the eraser tool and immediately just realized that's not what I need. I've got a black background, so I just need to paint. So let me go back to my brush. I hit B to go back to the brush. And these letters are the most important thing probably of all. This is the company's name. So we've got to pay extra careful attention that we have a real smooth lines through here. So I'm just going to click, you know, and paint out all the little problems. You want to pay special attention to the edges and the corners and the connections in between letters. So I'm just making these colors nice and precise and consistent, and you'll see how that helps us in just a little bit. Anything that looks a little odd, you'll just clean it up. I mean, you're trying to stay with the original font color, of course, and the original font style, but fonts are one of those things that really get distorted in these processes. So it's just something to just kind of use your own eye and decide where things look strange. So like I said, you really want to pay attention to the connections in between letters. That's what makes things look really messy. So just overemphasize those slightly and cut those things out without hopefully distorting the font too much. Little places like that right there and that R that are going to look raggedy. That's really important. So just go through and clean it up. Here's a great spot to, you know, keep things from being messy later. You know, these little corners. Here this T has decided to get a little out of control. We'll just bring it back into line. And I'm just going to cut this out right here. You know, when I first looked at this image, this was the first concern that I had, was that connection there was not going to translate well. And what it does is it just kind of affects the legibility when things are not, you know, when the letters are connected and it doesn't look intentional. You know, that's important, you know. Sometimes it looks intentional. Now here there's a little bit of white that makes me concerned that there was originally some shine on this, but that's something that we're just losing in this process. You know, we want clean more than we want shine. So we want it to be nice and clean. I see some more of that potential shine right down here, but I am going to just reduce it. I'm just going to get rid of it because I know that I can't get a clean selection. And if the customer wanted to preserve their artwork the way it originally came, they should ask for an SVG from the designer, which is sometimes hard because you just lose files. So we're kind of saving things right here. That's what we're doing. We're trying to make an image, as close to the original as we can while still getting some nice quality. Okay, I'm just going to keep doing this process. Okay, so at this point I've just saved it as a PSD. I've finished all my little adjustments, and I'm just going to merge this layer down. I mean, it was nice to have it separated at first, but I don't need it anymore, so I'm just going to go ahead and merge it down. And then I'm going to try inverting the image, so I'm just going to Image, Adjustments, Invert. And what that's done is it's made everything that was black, white, and vice versa. And it's flipped all the colors, and that's going to make it easier for me to trace this. Now what I want to do as well, I'm going to change it to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. And then I'm going to pump up the blacks on pretty much everything at first. Because all I'm looking at first is to just get like a base shape out of this. And then I'll worry about getting my individual shapes. So really I'm just taking everything down. And nothing you want to do too extreme. Okay. And now I'm thinking I want to paint out some of the other issues at this stage. So I'm just going to zoom in here and grab my brush tool again. And I'm just bringing up the size a little bit. I don't want any of this gray to get traced. We're going to end up tracing this as an SVG. And now this is being super picky. I'm just trying to make sure I don't have any gray. I'm trying to get as sharp corners as I possibly can. Okay. So just where I see it being really bad, that's where I'm cleaning it up. I don't want this process to look scary. I mean, if you do this a few times, you'll start getting the vibe of it. It's really not that hard. Alright, so now I'm going to clean up these edges because I'm just trying to get the overall shape at first. I just really want to nail the entire segment. So wherever I see lines, I'm just going to paint those out. So just clean that up. You can switch back and forth as you see things, grab another color. Go back to black. We want to, overlaps are the worst. You really want to focus on, the parts where the artwork overlaps. And I think this will all make sense in a second because we're going to, trace this and get our base of our SVG so that we don't have any gaps. And that's what these little lines might create, is like gaps when we go to trace. So just clean up all this mess. And that's why I saved too, is because at this, I'm going to revert all this to go back at some point. Okay, let me just continue that process. Okay, so now I have a pretty pure, almost solid black image. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to save that. I'm going to go up here to File, Export as PNG. I'm going to call this JCS logo black. So now you want to pop over to Inkscape. So you just want to download the current stable version of Inkscape if you don't already have it installed on your computer. And make sure you're getting that from inkscape.org. All the software and techniques I'm showing you in this are completely free. Okay, so we're just going to pop over to Inkscape and start a new document. I'm just going to hit File, New. And then I'm going to find that download, that black that just came down, and just pull it in and drop it and hit OK. Alright, so it might look a little bit wiggly or janky in this view, but that's okay. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-R, and that fit to that shape, that fit to that image size. So now it's cropped. The document size is the same as the image. Okay, and then I'm going to go to Trace Bitmap. Now, if you don't have this window, just go to Path, Trace Bitmap. And I'm just going to hit Apply. Awesome. Now I can actually remove that original image, and I'm going to do that. And I have a path. And you can see that it is a vector object now. And what I'm going to do is actually break it apart to separate the text from this part up here. So I'm going to select it. And I think you go to Path, Break Apart. I use Shift Control K. Control Shift K. Okay. And then I'm going to select these areas down here. So I'm going to select all the text. And I'm just holding Shift while I drag a rectangle around what I want to select. I'm using the Move tool up here. And then I'm going to hit Control K to join those all back together as a path. And I'm going to name this path Jake's. Alright, and now the other paths form this part. I'm just going to hit Control K on those. And then I'm name that, I'm going to call it Base, because it's the bottom part of my logo. Alright, so now we need a reference image. So I'm going to bring in the original reference that was given to me, the unupscaled, just original image. And that way I've got something to look at as a reference, and I can pick my colors from this because I can count on them being the truest colors there are. Alright, so let's first color this layer. So I've just selected that path, and I'm just looking for a clean part of this logo, which I know that's hard with all this mess, but like that looks like a little clean part of that logo. I'm going to choose the Fill and Stroke, and if you don't have that, I think you go to Object, Fill and Stroke, and then use the eyedropper tool and just grab that color right there. I'm clicking, I'm using the minus key on my keyboard to zoom out, and there we have the text separated. And this is a good chance to kind of compare. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's way better than what we had. Okay, so now this main base shape, I'm going to use this blue color. So I'm just going to select that, and then I'm going to select a clean part of that blue. And now that's forming all that background area. And you'll see this a lot with logos, especially professionally created nice logos like this one. You'll see, there'll be a base that goes all the way around the logo. It's fairly common. This one's super easy to do because of that. And when I analyze the results of my trace, little things like this notch in the back of the hammer, and there was a little indent here at the head, and then the grip down here, those details all seem like they transferred really well, and so that makes me happy. So this is a great time to save, so I'm just going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to go back to my Downloads folder, and I'm going to call this JCS Logo, and I'm actually going to put SVG because some people don't see the extensions on their computer, and that'll help them know this is the SVG. So now I'm going back to Photopea, and I'm going to open that PSD that I told you I saved earlier, and just get back to this stage. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is I'm going to use my magic wand tool. So I've got my magic wand tool, and I'm going to set the tolerance pretty high. I'm going to go for 100. And I chose that because I want this white part. I'm going to lay down the white, and I can see that there's a pretty strong separation between the white and the blue. It might get into the orange too much, and so those are kind of the adjustments you make along the way. I'm going to go with 80. Okay. So now with that wand tool selected, I want to make sure that it's got all layers. So sample all layers, because I still have my layer 1 in my background. And then I'm just going to click in the white part. And now I'm going to zoom in, Control plus, and just look at my edge. I'm pretty happy with what I see. And I'm going to hold shift and click. And that's going to select this portion of the white. And then I'm going to hold shift and click and select that portion. And then I've got this last little bit to select here. And I believe that's covering my white. And when we were refining our edges, that's really what we were focused on there. We were trying to clean it up to make this selection process easier. Now, once again, I'm going to merge down. I think that's probably going to be something that I just need to stay with at this point. Now that I've had to do it twice. I like to separate things into layers, but there's no reason if you don't need to. Now, this is a strategy. You know, you're always strategizing when you're doing this. I really can't select, you know, everything inside the white. I need to just lay the white on top. And that's just because of the way these edges work out. And you'll probably see more about what I mean as we go forward. So I'm just going to take this and hit Control C with my selection. So I've got my selection, Control C. And then I'm going to do Control Shift V. And then I'm going to turn this layer off. And now I can see my white and how it's been made. I'm going to right click on this and do blending options. I'm going to choose color overlay and set that to black. And it is. Perfect. Now I could go through and clean this up a little bit more. I can come in here and refine these edges wherever I see problems. The black really helps you see, you know, the little indentations and things that aren't great. So I'm just going to click with my eraser tool and then hold shift and click up here and just clean that up. And I'm just going to do the same thing right here. I might go all the way across this top line and clean up those little burrs. Anything that really just jumps out at you is also going to jump out at your customer. And you just want to make sure you got nice clean lines. And again, within the best of your ability. I mean, you know, you can't spend all day on this. Because time is money. These little edges right here are looking a little jagged. So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth, shift clicking to straighten those up. And I think that's what I'm going to go with. All right, so I'm going to do File, Export as PNG, and I'm going to name this JCS Logo White and hit Save. Now this next step is really important. I want to make sure that I actually line this up perfectly on my document. I'm back in Inkscape. I'm opening up my folder. I found that image, and I'm just going to drop that in and hit Embed. Okay. And now that's what's happened is it's actually not lined up perfectly, and that's all right. We're going to fix that. We're going to go to our Align and Distribute, which you can find that under Object, Align and Distribute. So we're going to go to our Align and Distribute panel. We're doing it relative to the page. We're just going to center it on the horizontal axis and then center it on the vertical axis. Awesome. You probably guess what's going to happen next. We've got that image selected, and I'm going to go to Trace Bitmap, and I'm just going to hit Apply. And then just like before, I'm going to get rid of that image I just traced. And I'm going to call this white. Awesome. And I think this is a pure white, but just in case, I'm going to pick it and just see how close to pure it is. And it's so close, you can tell that by this hex code, that I'm just going to make it actually pure white. So I can just drag these sliders over to the right and get, you know, all Fs. So now we have our white outline. Now switching back to Photopea, I'm going to take this orange. And this is going to be tricky. I mean, now that I look at this and I'm ready to actually refine this part, I can really see that this orange is dying off quite a bit and it gets really thin in here. So I'm just going to select that orange color and I'm just going to paint. I'm going to paint right on this background. Make sure I've got some nice solid orange all through there. That is going to be a really tricky part. So you can just keep, you know, scaling up and down your brush to paint these things in and paint these different areas. So we don't want to lose any of this. We want this to be nice and pretty. And I'm just kind of sharpening that up. And wherever I see a variation in color, because we're going to use that magic wand tool trick again. And then just make your brush real small to make these little indentations. And focus on the edges. You know, just like before, the edges are the most important part. If you clean those up, then your wand will kind of go all the way to the edge. And you get your real nice selection. And you know, if we wanted to, we could even paint that part in, but like I said, you've just got to choose your battles. All right. So now I'm going to turn this tolerance way up. I don't see this touching any whites. So 100 is going to be really strong. And it should get into all these little nooks and crannies pretty nicely. And I'm fairly happy with that. And I hold shift and select this part as well. Yep. I'm not super happy with it, but I'm happy enough. All right, I'm going to hit Control C, Control Shift V, turn off the back, and do that same blending options trick. So we'll do blending options, color overlay, okay. And then we're just going to do File, Export as PNG, and we're going to call this JCS logo orange. Same step, drag it in, drop it, hit OK. Same step, align the layer. Same step, trace the bitmap. Remove the image. Name it orange. So now we can go in and look at this trace. And what we're looking for is just to make sure that there's good overlap. And I'm pretty proud of that. I mean, there's places in here where the blue is peeking out. And what you can do is you can just select that object and grab your node editor and just kind of pull the blue in. You know, you can pull it in all the way around this edge and make sure that it's not peeking out. It's nice to have those edges in there. And you can get in here really close and just make it really nice and clean like this. So I'm just pulling the nodes towards, so that they're inside the black, you know, towards the, away from the edge there. Just the blue ones, that's what we're working on. That's the object that's selected. And you can go all the way around this transition area and make sure that you don't have any, you know, blue peeking out into the area that you really want to be orange. So there we go, just kind of keep pilling on that. You don't want to go crazy, just a little bit's good. And then let's look right here, and we'll just be really precise with this one where it transitions from the one color to the other. You can even tilt that slightly. And we'll pull this in and just look at how that lines up. Pull this in just a bit. Pull this handle down. So we got a nice little connection there. Looks like this could be just like that. It looks pretty smooth to me. All right, just using minus to zoom out. And then anywhere that you don't like the shape, you can adjust it. So I might just make this look a little more rounded. Take a little artistic liberty there, just a smidge. Okay, and now color. So we're just going to zoom in here, and same thing. We're going to grab our fill and stroke. We've got the object selected, and it's really hard to determine where the pretty color is. So I'm just going to go here. I don't know that color looks a little, brighter than the dark orange of the construction surfaces. So I'm just going to go with that color. It's as close as I can get. Awesome. All right, this would be a good time to save our work, because we're just about to embark on the most difficult part of this whole process, and that's going to be trying to get a clean selection on this orange. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep that tolerance really high, and then we're going to select in this orange area up at the top, and wow, I mean, that worked out pretty great. But I'm also going to shift select down here in the darker part of the orange, because as we can see, there's a gradient. The gradient kind of looks like it's coming from the top right and going down to the bottom left. So there's an angle on that gradient. So I've just kind of selected those areas, shift select up here and shift select down here. And that should be getting a good blend of both. Now I'm going to select that background layer and hit Control C and then Control Shift V, and we're just going to follow those same steps to get this into Inkscape. Okay, so I brought that in and traced it, and now I'm going to get rid of this one, this image, and I'm going to name this one Gradient. And then I'm actually going to pull that below the orange and the white. I'm just going to kind of take a look at those connections. I think it's pretty good. I don't want to see blue peeking out in between this connection of this white and this what's going to be gradient orange. And I really don't see that, but if I did, then I could adjust either the white or the black to make sure that it overlaps. I do see a little wobble right here in my white. Let's see if I can fix that. So I could just delete this node and then set this node to auto smooth. And I think that's got it. A little bit better. Okay, and I'm using middle mouse button to move around. That also works in Inkscape, which is wonderful. So now we need to pull this gradient. So let's experiment with that. So I've just gone back to my fill and stroke with this selected, and I'm just going to choose linear gradient as the fill. And with the object selected, I'm going to select my gradient tool. And you can see that it's going from left to right. And I'm not exactly sure how this goes, but I'm going to put it like this. That seems a little extreme. And like this. I'm looking up at the top, and I'm just adjusting the angle to try to match what I'm seeing. It's not much of an angle. I see lots of light orange up here. I'm just going to bring that down to there. Okay. Yeah, I think there's still a little more. There's not much angle at all. So I'm just bringing this over. This is just your eyeball hoping to fix this for you. So with this stop selected, I should be able to just pick the color from the image. So I'm just going to pick right up here. And then I'm going to select this stop and pick the color right down here. And I know that's subtle, but it does make a difference. Okay, we're almost done. So let's wrap this up. So now we're almost finished. I'm just going to go ahead and delete this image. I'm going to trim the logo. So I'm going to hold Control and hold Shift and R. and that fits it. With nothing selected, it will fit around the edges of all the image, okay? And then I'm going to save this one more time, so it's saved as the SVG. And then I'm also going to export a PNG. So usually 3600 is what we go for. So just set it to 3600, and it's going to save it right in that same folder I'm working in. I'm just going to name this one PNG and hit export. And let's look at our final. So let's get that up here. That is our final image. And let's see if we can compare that to what we got, which was this. So if you blew this up to the size that you needed it at to print, you can see how messy and horrible that is. And if you blow this up, you can see how clean and wonderful that is. Hey, I know this was a really long tutorial. I didn't expect that, but it takes some time to get these things right. And I hope you learned something and this helps you in your projects. Thanks for ordering your DTF transfers from 143vinyl.com. And thanks for watching my videos. Have an amazing day. Goodbye.